So welcome to today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Terry Belcourt. I'm a registered nurse and a nursing advisor and the interim director of practice here at the SRNA. So today I'm so thrilled to be here with Susan Basilewski, and we're going to talk about the topic of mentorship and what that looks like, what that might look like in the future for the SRNA and members. So before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that this presentation, I currently am on Treaty 4 territory, and Susan's in Saskatoon on Treaty 6, and recognize the strength, resilience, and capacity of the Treaty 4 and 6 and Métis people in this land. So thank you again for joining us. We've got a couple people on, which is fantastic. I'm sure there'll be others join as we go through. Just a couple of notes before we get started is that you'll be able to hear and see the presentation, but you won't be able to directly talk to us. So the best way to have some input into the conversation, and this is going to be quite an interactive webinar, so we really encourage you to do this, is to put your comments into the chat, or you can put questions into the question and answer module. So you can find those sections either at the bottom of your screen or at the top in a task, like a toolbar. We will also be asking polling questions throughout the presentation. So we really look forward to hearing your answers there. We'll leave the questions open for a few seconds, 20 seconds or so. So if you could promptly answer those questions, and we can use that information to help inform the rest of our presentation. Anything else before we get started, Susan? I guess introducing you would be a good idea. This is Susan Basilewski. She's a registered nurse and has been working with the SRNA in a few different capacities, but one of the ways that her and I have been working together is through the online community of practice. And that's really led into this mentoring piece, and we're going to touch on that a little bit later. Susan, do you want to give some more background about you?
Well, I think, sure, many nurses probably might recognize my name. I also do some part-time instruction through the College of Nursing, and have a fairly varied background in the health system, ranging from point of care staff nurse to vice president, and really have enjoyed all my roles. So I'm happy to be part of this and to focus on mentoring the Terry, because it's such a big piece that throughout my whole career has come up from various nurses and others, actually, other health professionals.
Excellent. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today and how we're going to interact with you. So we really want to hear from you about mentoring in our health system. We're going to provide some background information on some initiatives that the SRNA is developing regarding mentoring, and hear your advice and input into how we can shape this initiative to make it be really meaningful for you today in your workplace. So when we look at mentorship and why the SRNA is involved in this in any way, is because our standards and our code of ethics actually compel all registered nurses to be in a mentorship capacity. So informally or informally with other registered nurses, nursing students, colleagues, both to support professional growth, and then also to create those teams that are so important. When I think about the code of ethics, there's another statement that talks about nurses work collaboratively to develop a moral community, and how we bring nursing students into the fold when they step onto our units really is the beginning of their nursing career, and how we can start mentoring them without being in any kind of formal capacity right from those first few moments, and how important that is to their introduction into the profession. So we've got a few questions. Susan, did you want to say anything before I kind of jumped on that one?
No, I think I do want to say one thing. Through my involvement in the nurses administrative PPG with Kathy Jeffrey and other nurses who have had a very strong commitment to working with nurses in the province, one of the things that's come through very loud and clear is a desire for nurses to have mentorship, and where can they go with questions when they want a bit of advice and a bit of help. And our province is so geographically spread out for us, and how can we do this? And this has come forward as a fairly strong need, as I said earlier, throughout my career, and specifically through that PPG as well.
Yeah, and I think we're hearing it too through our practice calls. We hear a lot from new graduates who, you know, they don't have the formal mentoring programs anymore, and so, you know, they're looking for advice on things that that they could be getting more direct answers to if they had somebody in their work environment that could answer those questions. We also did a project with Fred Entz, who looked at what newly graduated nurses and nursing students, what kind of support we could provide to them from the SRNA perspective. And that informal piece was really, really something that came through strongly, and how to connect people together. And is the SRNA, can we provide that linkage in any way? So before we go too much further, we're going to get you engaged. So I'm going to launch some questions here. These are the questions, and you're going to see a screen pop up here shortly. So please just answer yes or no, that you are currently in a mentorship role, that you'd like to be a mentor, or that you'd like to be mentored. So just to, those are two different questions there, about being a mentor, or really wanting that input and that connection with someone else to be mentored. So we're almost there. We've got 2 of 3 people that are answered. So we'll leave it a few more seconds. There we go. So we'll end that and share the results. Share the results. Oh boy. There we go. Okay, so what we have is that 2/3 are currently in a mentorship role. Everyone would like to be mentored, would like to be a mentor, and 2 of 3 would like to be mentored. So that's, I think that helps to show really what the value of mentorship is, and that it is, you know, it's great that the people that are on here are wanting to be in that, act in that capacity. So that's great. We've got a couple more questions here. So I'll put those up. So I have experience in mentoring and being a mentee, and there is a mentorship program, for a formal one, in my workplace. So again, yes or no answers, just to get a little bit more information from our audience. And you guys are quick, so thank you so much for answering those so quickly. Everyone has some experience with being mentored, with mentoring either as a mentor or mentee, and 1 of 3 have a formal mentorship program in place. So that's really interesting, and it would be great to hear more about what that means, what that looks like in your workplace. Okay.
I'm going to talk for probably a minute or two, a little bit around mentoring and the difference between preceptors and mentors. And the people who are on the call maybe know this already. However, it's important for us to distinguish that. And we use the word preceptor very often in context of our students, and particularly when they're completing that final practicum. It's also used for newly graduated nurses who are making that initial transition. And preceptorship is usually something that, you know, preceptors are chosen by their specific knowledge base and their specific grounding in an area of practice. It's often a very short-term relationship, and not often is there a choice in terms of the mentor choosing who their preceptor is. Often it's, particularly in the student situation, the student is paired with a mentor, or paired with a preceptor, and the focus here is very much on tasks and specific skills and routines. A mentor, on the other hand, is formal. It can be informal too, a supportive relationship between two or more health professionals that results in growth. And I've been in situations where I've mentored other health professionals outside of nursing, or gone to other health professionals in other health professions for mentoring for specific topics. The mentoring relationship is around guidance and support. There is often a lot of discussion around careers. Many mentors are involved in staff retention. It's certainly been shown as a factor in staff retention. Mentors have significant experience, and one of the things that often distinguishes a mentor from a preceptor is that there is an ongoing relationship that lasts as long as the mentor and the mentee establish, and sometimes it can be years. And there's quite a strong coaching and feedback in a different way because of the nature of the relationship with the mentor and the trust relationship that's formed, and often a bond. There's quite a strong feedback relationship, and many people looking to their mentors want their mentor to really challenge them and at times confront them on why they're choosing a certain avenue, and help their mentee work through different options. So I think we have another slide coming up, Terry. So some of this I've already covered in terms of what specifically mentors do. There are times when a mentor is specific to a specific situation or a specific skill. And there are nurses often will have more than one mentor. They may have a mentor for specific in leadership skills. In terms of business skills, they have another mentor to assist them with, for example, conflict resolution skills. And as I mentioned, the mentor, it does not necessarily always have to be in the same healthcare profession. We're talking right now around nurses mentoring nurses. There are opportunities, though, for individuals in other professions to also mentor us. I put this slide up around mentees. Would you just mentor anyone? And how do you know? And who picks who? And these questions are really for us to ponder a little bit around how does this relationship form, and what are some of the things that are involved in this relationship between a mentee and a mentor? Because certainly when I think of my own experience, and we are going to hear from you around your experience as well, there is often a match between the skill set and the of both, and what the needs are of the mentee and what the skill set is. And there are times when perhaps I might think that someone can mentor me on a specific area, and maybe it's not working out. And so part of my discussion with them would be to, where else can I get some additional information or some additional support or help? And there's times when, as mentors, we may want to refer to an additional mentor in terms of collectively helping an individual nurse. So how you know and who picks who is very much relationship based, and very much based on needs, each other's needs, for sure, because it's quite a reciprocal relationship. So I think we're going to hear, okay, Terry, back to you.
So now we really want to hear from you, and we're just going to take a minute to really pause and reflect on your mentoring experiences. We want to hear what your experiences have been, what your thoughts are, and what you have, if you've mentored, what advice you have for someone who might be wanting to build those skills. What worked for you, what didn't work for you, those kinds of things. So we really, again, you can put those comments into the chat. You should have a little orange bubble sort of blinking, or something orange, because I've already put a message in there, so that would indicate you got a message. You can send that to everyone, or you can just send it to the panelists, which is Susan and I, and we can take your questions from there. Or if you want to be more anonymous, you can go into the Q&A and select there that you want to remain anonymous in your question. We won't say your names anyway, but just be free to share This is what the most value out of these webinars is, really when we start getting comments and questions from our audience. When we were preparing for this, I was telling Susan my very first registered nursing job was on the little pediatric unit in Saskatoon at RUB. And that was an incredible unit where I felt mentored every single day. There was no such thing as a mentorship program back then. But just the way that everyone, from like the LPNs, the unit clerks, the RNs, everybody made sure that I had the information that I needed and supported me to grow and really provide that safe, excellent care that was the standard online care. So it comes in all forms, that's for sure. Sometimes it takes a bit of time to type and put in a question. So thank you for taking that time. So we do have a comment here, a couple comments. So one thing that I really found helpful was when my mentor asked me, what do you think about questions? It allowed me to reflect on a certain area, and we really explored certain topics. For example, mindfulness in nursing. That is a great piece of advice for helping to understand where they're coming from and get that baseline and engage in that conversation. So that's great. Thank you. What worked well for me is the mentee knowing what they need from me. Sorting out expectations has always been helpful. The mentor letting me share what I need to understand where I am coming from has been really important to me, and I've always appreciated leaving a discussion with some type of plan, even if it means I have the chance to think about something and take on a new perspective. That is excellent. So important, again, to have that great conversation and that relationship building. I think that both parties need to be honest about how much time they can give to the relationship. I find in running a mentorship program, the number one frustration is when people are not on the same page. Very good reflection. Thank you for sharing that. We are all busy, and I think that's one of the things with mentorship is to not make it something else that we have to do in the day, but really focus on those relationships. And it has to be when you're the mentor, you give and you take, right? You learn and you teach. So it's a relationship that goes both ways. Susan, any comments from you?
I'm quite interested in if anyone's been involved in, it sounds like this last individual, in more formal mentorship programs, and what does work about that. Because it sounds like when we're not, and I know that if you're not on the same page, makes it very difficult to work together. So I'm really, it's so important to think about those things, and I'm interested if any of the people who are on the webinar have additional experience with the more formal programs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I found that when participants formalize their relationship with a mentoring contract, those relationships work better. Good comment. And another one around the communication piece. So just figuring out what communication is going to be used. For example, if I get a text, that means I can respond today. If it's an email, then I know it can wait for a day or so. So that's really good too, to prioritize that type of communication. Another comment, working in a manager role in healthcare is so complex and fast-paced. It seems there's hardly ever time to reflect, analyze, and course correct, particularly when you're tasked with leading improvement and the people around you are not into it. I was coached once by a nurse leader who helped me unpack the situation I was trying to work through. Her coaching included that I should be authentic with the people I was working with, that I should engage them really in the proposed improvement and not take the whole thing on myself. This advice helped me then and still helps me now. I only wish I would have had the opportunity to be coached by this senior nurse leader earlier in my career. Thank you very much for sharing. Those are great examples. So maintaining that communication, setting up the expectations right at the beginning. And I think that goes back to what Susan said too about really picking and, figuring out who you can work with and who you match with so that that relationship is really positive. Mentoring can be contrived. There has to be a connection, and this can't be forced. I think this could be why mentorship programs get bad press. That's a very good reflection. Again, I'd read, where you really try to personality match a little bit to make sure that that relationship is going to be a positive thing. So if, there's lots of choice in that, and those connections get made in the most positive ways. Well, please do keep those comments coming. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Susan, before we sort of move on to there's a vulnerability in mentoring that is part of how nurses work together for sure. And I agree with the last comment. I find the more successful matches are ones that are identified by the individuals. And mentorship programs can't be written into collective bargaining agreement. Perhaps new techniques could be tried. Start with one unit or workplace. Great ideas. And that's really what we're hoping to do, is to help sort of spearhead some thinking around how we as a profession can take this responsibility that we have and own it. Take it on and really make it come alive in a way that's meaningful for us without having to rely on anyone else. So we can maybe talk a little bit about what that looks like if we're ready to move on. Like I said, please do keep the comments coming. But I will share a little bit about our online community of practice and how we're looking to address mentorship in a couple of different ways there. So for anyone who, hopefully you've been into the online community of practice, every registered nurse and nurse practitioner has been invited to the community. If you haven't, for some reason, received an invitation, you can email community@srna.org and we'll get you an invitation to that, whatever email address you send us the email with. So within the online community, we're really hoping to promote mentorship. And we're going to do that two ways. So one is to have experts available as mentors for a couple of weeks throughout the year. So they're going to tell us what area of expertise they have. And then we're going to schedule them in and have some discussion around that area. So one area, for example, might be foot care. So you would know in the community we'll start a discussion thread around foot care. And we know that there's going to be a foot care expert who will be making comments and asking questions during that, and answering your questions during a week block, probably a week block at a time is what we're thinking, but it'll depend on people's availability too. So the expectation then of a mentor in that area is that you would sign up for at least 2 weeks throughout the year to provide that expertise. The second stream is to start connecting new graduates with more experienced nurses in a more purposeful mentorship role. So one of the reasons that we started the online community is to really connect nurses throughout Saskatchewan. That was our goal. And so it seems logical that we would move into this. If people are meeting here, then it's a good place to make connections as well. So we'll be looking for people to sign up to be mentors, and also looking for new grads who are, and maybe new nurses even who are have moved into a new area of practice, any nurse that wants to be mentored. And then we'll start looking at how we can match the mentors and the mentees up. Susan, any other comments?
I just wanted to add, as we're looking at options with this, the first process that Terry described, where an individual with a certain expertise would say, I'm available February 1st week, for example. That is a more open community of practice online discussion. So if it was foot care, I would type in my question around foot care, and the answer would be seen by all the people who want to follow that comment. So it's a lot more open type of mentorship and expertise. The second one that we're looking at with the students is something that happens behind the scenes, where we use the online community for people to answer a questionnaire to identify that they're interested. And then we're going to set up a process where we would connect our new grads with our mentors, and they would connect offline. So it would be an email connection that happens. So it wouldn't be that the new grad is spilling all their vulnerabilities to out in the community of practice for everyone else to read. It's something that happens offline.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. Absolutely. So we could just have a few questions again for you, getting your help as we sort of start to move into this. Mentorship, I just wanted to say as well, is something that has come up. We're looking at our 3-year strategic plan, and it is one of the initiatives that has really risen to the top. So it connects really well to our SRNA strategic plan and to the goals and desired ends of our council. So this is profession-led regulation, which is exciting. So as we venture into this, what is your first reaction to working with a mentor online? If you could just add into the chat box 1 or 2 words about that. What's one thing that we need to think about or consider as we look at online mentoring program? And that can be more than one thing, so feel free to add in any of your comments with regards to that. And if you were to give the SRNA one piece of advice about what needs to be considered regarding mentoring in our workplaces today, what would this be? What do we have to think about when we look at mentoring based on today's workplaces? So those are some questions and some areas of feedback that we would really appreciate your comments on. I hope people are getting into the community. We rolled that out to all members over the renewal period. So you should have received an email. But like I said, if you didn't, you can always send us an email and we'll get you signed up. There's been some really neat discussions in there, and I think this mentoring piece is really going to take off and be something that people look forward to. But your insight, one of the reasons I think that our online community is growing and starting to meet people's needs is because we got that input from members right from the very beginning through focus groups and having members be part of the selection process and that kind of thing. So this kind of feedback is just so vital to helping us. So a couple of comments. I think we need to think about the pace and speed of today's workplace when we look at mentoring and how those connections for mentees and mentors can be made in a meaningful way. And we have to consider the generational differences in the workplace. Will more experienced nurses, example boomers, be open to connecting online? Very good comments. Yeah, I think those are really important things for us to think about. Some other pieces of advice would be to look at creating a mentoring culture, i.e. training for mentors, webinars, etc. The reason being is that in my work with the mentorship program I've found through the years that the millennial generation is less formal in their mentorships. They seek out groups of individuals to mentor them instead of individual one-on-one mentors. So that is a great piece of information too. I know that there's other groups that are looking at mentoring within Saskatchewan as well. And so there's one person that's doing some research that we are hoping to link in with her in the new year once she's completely done. So that is great. If you have suggestions for, what those webinars might be, experts in mentoring, we would be happy to either do a webinar Wednesday presentation or have them come and join us in the community as an expert for a week. That would be tying both streams together. I think that generational gap will be something that will be interesting to see. And I think maybe some of the momentum and the benefit of engaging in those conversations online might help some of those less inclined to be online take the leap, and knowing that you don't necessarily have to have a lot of input and put your thoughts out there. You can just be an observer and take in the information, and that's okay too. Susan, any other thoughts or reflections from you?
Just as I'm listening and watching and reading, I'm wondering, Terry, if we want to do a bit of an environmental scan or needs assessment using the online community itself, because we've done a little bit with surveys and quizzes that people go into, and maybe there's something that we want to ask some similar questions that we've been doing in this webinar, using the online community for that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Very good idea. I guess I'll put in a little plug as well. If you're in the online community, or even if you're not, there's still time to get in there. But next Tuesday, 9th, we're hosting a focus group through the online community just to get some more feedback on how we can use that platform and what types of information people are looking for. So again, if you'd like to provide your feedback in that capacity, especially as it relates to mentorship, it would be great for you to attend then as well. That event is set up in the community of practice. So, well, I think we're not seeing any new comments at the moment. So some next steps is that mentoring initiative will be launched online through the community. There's the email if you need to get an invitation resent to you to join the community of practice. And I just really like to thank everyone for their excellent comments. Some really great thoughts out there. Mentorship is obviously important to people, and we look forward to working with you to help you and your SRNA make those connections. Susan, any last thoughts from you?
Similar, to thank the people who did take the time to come on the webinar. And I really think that it helps us think a lot about how we want to gain input as we build this. And there's opportunities for us to gain some more input so that it can belong to our nurses in Saskatchewan based on their needs. Yeah. Thanks, Terry, for being the moderator.
Yeah, thank you for joining and providing your expertise. Susan has mentored me in many ways, so I really appreciate this time and being able to do this project with her. And just a last comment here, could it help to advertise this initiative through the Chief Nursing Officer for the SHA? That's a really good comment, and we will definitely look at that. I think that's a really very great idea. So thank you for that. And if you have other ideas like that you'd like to share, feel free to send them to the community email that's on the screen. And I think that's it. So thank you all for participating and have a wonderful day.